Hi, welcome to this short instructional video about how to upgrade the firmware on your Microbit. My name's Bob Hyam. I'm a STEM ambassador and I'm currently working alongside West Suffolk College as part of their EdTech Demonstrator Schools and Colleges programme. If you want more details about the courses and videos that are currently being offered by West Suffolk College, then please go to their website. The easiest way to do that is just Google search West Suffolk College EdTech, and you will see a couple of pamphlets which outline all of the courses that are currently available. Okay, let's go back to our microbits. So the microbit is a small microcontroller that's quite common in schools. You've probably got a few of them kicking around. And we're going to just, as I say, wander through the process of upgrading the firmware. So let's start by having a quick look at the machine we're going to change. So the kit you'll need if you're going to do the upgrade whilst you're following this video is a microbit. And I have two microbits here, and the USB connection cable, and a browser on a computer. For this video, I'm going to be using a Chromebook, but it's a very, very similar process on either a Windows machine or a Mac. As you can see, I've got two microbits on the pad here. The one on the left is a Mark 1. The one on the right is a Mark 2. And on the facing side of the microbit, the primary difference is that you can see that there are notches cut out of the bottoms of the pins, which makes it easier for crocodile clip connections to be made to the Mark II computer. The other thing is that the actual symbol for the microbit is a touch sensitive, which it isn't on the Mark I. The biggest difference is on the other side, which is very apparent. So on the Mark II, you can see that there is a speaker and a microphone built onto the microbit, so it has sound capabilities, which the Mark I does not. Now, the Mark II is quite a recent innovation, so most of those will have the appropriate firmware on them, so we're not going to bother with that. We're going to stick to the Mark I, and we're going to use this Mark I microbit to demonstrate the upgrade. So the first thing we're going to do is to connect the microbit to our computer, to my Chromebook. And that's a very simple process. The power connection and USB connection is the central one on the rear of the microbit. Make sure that you orientate the cable the right way. So you can see there's two little tags and two little holes. Those should meet, and then just plug it straight in. When you plug it in, the little LED will light and flash whilst it's connecting to the computer, and you'll then get a message on your machine to say it's connected. So let's go back and have a look on the machine at that connection. So in a Chromebook, we're looking at the Files app. You'll be looking at a similar folders app on the Windows or a Mac machine. And you can see on the left-hand side that it's showing that the microbit is connected, which is great. So if we click on that, we can see that the files are actually visible on the microbit. Okay, good. So let's go through what we need to do to upgrade the firmware on this machine. So the first thing we're going to do is actually have a look at whether or not it needs upgrading. And in order to do that, we're going to go to the Let's Code area of the Microbit website. So we're going to click on Let's Code. And obviously this is a primary course, so we're looking at the blocks editor. So we're going to go to the Make Code editor on the left-hand side and click on that. And I've already prepared a brief program which we're going to use as part of this instructional video. So We are now looking at the programming interface for blocks on the Microbit, and the screen is broken up into three fundamental parts. So on the left-hand side, we've got the Microbit emulator, and we have a course about using that that's available. The central part are the various blocks that we use, and then the right-hand side of the screen is the programming area, and we have an extremely simple program which we're going to use to test our firmware change a bit later on. The bit we're really interested in at this point in time is at the bottom left of the screen, which is the download area. And the primary reason for upgrading firmware is to make use of the single-click download options that the later versions of firmware have in place. Currently, you have to save your firmware, your software, to your computer and then drag and drop it into the Microbit to load the Microbit. With the upgraded version, you simply click on the download button and it's automatically downloaded straight to the Microbit. And we'll go through that now. So we're going to look to pair the device, and it's the pair device process that enables us to do that. So we'll click on pair device, and it basically says connect your computer with a USB cable, which we've done, and now try and pair the device. So I've clicked on that, and the Microbit website is saying that it can't find any compatible devices. So obviously the Microbit we've got plugged in isn't compatible. So I cancel that. And it immediately suggests that you should update your firmware, or check your firmware at least, and that you must have version 249 or above of the firmware in order to be able to do this pairing. So let's click on the check firmware, and that opens a new window. And if we scroll down that window, step 2 on that window says check your firmware version, and it goes through how to do that. But I'll take you through that at this point now. So if you remember, we opened the files window, and we had our Microbit, and within that there were 3 files, and the details.txt file is the file that contains the information about the firmware version number. The simplest way to view the text file in Chromebook is to right click on that and open it with view, which is what I'm going to do. It will be slightly different depending on which machine you use. And with view, it opens a new browser tab, and you can see that on that browser tab it's saying that we're running version 0234 of the firmware on this Microbit, and that's all we actually need to know. So we can close that tab, go back to the documentation, and just scroll down to step 3, which is about upgrading the firmware. And item 1 in that says that you should put your Microbit into maintenance mode, and that to do this you unplug the USB cable from the Microbit and reconnect it while you hold down the reset button. And once you've done that, you will see a maintenance drive instead of the Microbit drive. So I'm going to take you through that step by step. Okay, so let's go back to the files folder, and as I said earlier on, the Microbit is shown on the left hand side, and we actually want to disconnect that and reconnect it as per the instructions. Now obviously when you disconnect, you should always eject a storage device first. That applies to any storage device. So I'm going to click on the eject button. The Microbit no longer shows on the files interface, and I can now go and disconnect my Microbit. So I'm going to disconnect the Microbit, and if you recall from the instructions, it said that we're going to reconnect it, but with the reset button held down whilst we do that. So looking at the Microbit, we've got the USB stroke power connection in the middle, the reset button, and then the battery connector on the right hand side. So it's the reset button in the middle that we're going to hold down whilst we plug in our USB connector again. So remembering the orientation for the USB connector, so we've got two slots that marry to each other. I think I can show that to you. Two slots on the plug, two slots on the socket, and we're going to reconnect that whilst we hold down the reset button. So I've got my reset finger on the reset button, and we're going to plug that in. Then release the reset button, and the LED will flash to say it's connected. And if we go back to our files folder, we can now see that the Microbit has disappeared and been replaced by the maintenance folder on the Microbit. So again, if we click on that, we can see the files that are being held on the Microbit. Okay, so if we go now back to our instructions, it says that the next thing you should do is download the firmware.hex file. So you just click on that link and download the firmware to your machine. I've already done that to save a bit of time. And again, I'm going to show you how to drag and drop that file into the maintenance drive. And that will upload the new firmware onto the Microbit. So if we go back to our files folder, I've put the Microbit firmware into my downloads area, and you can see that it's version 0249 of the Microbit firmware.hex, and we simply drag and drop that into the maintenance area. So grab hold of that and put it into the maintenance area. When that happens, you'll find that the yellow LED on the Microbit will flash on and off. And then as part of that process, the Microbit disconnects itself from your computer. So you can see the maintenance drive has now disappeared, and it will then reconnect. And it has reconnected now as the Microbit, which is great. So we should now have a new version of the firmware sitting on the Microbit. So if we click on the Microbit and right click on details.txt and open and view, you can now see that that file has changed markedly. And the important piece that we're after is the interface version, and it's version 0249. So we've now upgraded from 234 to 249. Great. So we can click off that tab, and we've completed step 3 of the instructions. So we don't need that any further. Let's go back to our program area, and we can get rid of that and check now to see whether or not we can pair our device. So I'm going to click on the pair device, and as before, I'm just going to click on the pair device button, and now you can see that it's seeing the Microbit as a pairable device. So we click on that and click connect. The download symbol changes, and we can now click on that to download our software straight onto the Microbit without having to drag and drop it. So we click on download. You'll see the LED flash as the hex file is downloaded onto the Microbit. And when that's completed, it'll say download completed, and we can then try running that code to show that we've upgraded the firmware and been able to successfully download our software. So let's go back to our Microbit and see if the software has downloaded correctly. So the code was that if I push button A, it should show the message, the test firmware message. Excellent. So that's all worked correctly. So if we go back to our programming area, I just want to raise one point about the changes that have been made by the firmware, and that is to do with a pupil problem that often occurs where code mystically disappears when it hasn't been saved properly. In the previous version, whenever you had to download your code to the Microbit, you had to save your file onto your machine and then drag and drop it into the Microbit. You no longer need to do that, which is great. It makes it a lot simpler to manage the Microbit. But it does mean that you haven't saved your software onto your machine. So were you to just let this all go, then there would be no copy of your software on the machine. And it's really important then, therefore, that with this version of firmware, you encourage pupils to regularly save their software using the save button, which is different to the download area. So saving it to their machine on a regular basis is obviously to be encouraged. Okay, I think that's all I've got to say. If you found that useful, then please look out for more of our instructional videos and courses on the West Suffolk College website. Thanks very much for watching.